Why do you think the 49ers waited essentially a month and a half to call up Ian Rappaport and be like, hey, man, your report that Sam Darnold's most likely going to start week 1 is way off. Why would you write off Trey Lance? They waited a month and a half to do it. Why do you think they did?
I don't know if they. I don't know if they actually waited. I don't remember him saying a time frame there, other than that.
I guess I'm assuming.
That, that he made the he said what he said, and then at some point they reached out to him. To me, I think it makes more sense that the 49ers would have reached out to him immediately. Not necessarily immediately, like within that day or two, asking him, hey, why are you doubting Trey Lance here? And it goes back to I think when you look at this, it's like, why are the 49ers even reaching out to Ian Rappaport to begin with? Because there's really no reason for them to be worrying about what Ian Rappaport is saying in terms of who their quarterback is. I don't remember the 49ers making calls to Rap Sheet or any reporter back in 2021 during the draft when everybody was wrong about who they were going to take Mac Jones. So why did they feel the need to even reach out here? I think that's really the bigger question, is why at all, rather than the time frame. Because I don't think the timing happened after the draft. It just sounds like they just reached out to him and said, hey, why don't you believe in our guy?
Well, we don't know the exact timing, but I think the timing is extremely important, and I'll say why. To me, if Ian Rappaport said he essentially reported that Sam Darnold most likely will start week 1. If they had, that was at the annual meetings in Arizona in March. If the Niners had contacted him, like, dude, what are you talking about? And he waited 6 weeks to correct it, that's unprofessional. Like, dude, they corrected you and you didn't say anything. Like, what kind of false impression are you trying to create and why? Like, what agenda do you have? Are you friends with Sam Darnold? That to me is strange. What makes a little bit more sense, and we don't know for sure. I'm just guessing. But the reason I assume that he heard recently is, I don't know. They reach out to you now, and then you say something about it. Now, what's strange is he said it so casually. He didn't make it a report on NFL Network. He just let it slip on Pat McAfee's show, which I think is interesting. To me, the timing it's after the draft. And I believe there was a Trey Lance hotline, and they were looking at it, and either it didn't ring or they answered it and they didn't like what they heard. But the phone lines were available. I think they were for Ayuk too. No disrespect to Ayuk. They were open for business. Business didn't get done. And I think now, there's like, you know what? Maybe we got to pump up that trade value that we may have not helped. That's the cynical version of me. The other version makes me feel like, hey, they just got to OTAs. They just saw Trey Lance in person for the first time since he broke his ankle. He's been working with a new quarterback coach. He's been working with Patrick Mahomes. Maybe they like what they see. That's the non-cynical version of me. And that's why I think the timing is important. But again, we have no idea what the timing actually is.
Those are both really good takes. I agree with you. That's the trade take was the direction I was leaning towards. Why I think they probably did it a little bit sooner, because that was when we were hearing about, it seemed like John Lynch was kind of putting out there, hey, he's available if you want to come and get him. Kind of same thing with Brandon Ayuk, and nothing happened there. So it's almost like, hey,
we'll listen on anyone except for Nick Bosa and this person, but we'll listen to that hotline is done, but this hotline is open. You got to love that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I that's why I feel like this probably happened sooner rather than later. And I don't think it would have come out at all if it wasn't for they were just having a conversation and somebody brought up the Sam Darnold. They brought up the Matt Mayoko thing. I think is kind of what kicked off the conversation on Sam Darnold, right? Was the Mayoko best thrower in 49er history comment and so on.
I think that one brought a little bit too much attention. Like the whole idea that the Niners I think they were just trying to whisper a little bit. Like, we really like Sam Darnold. There's a reason we gave him $3.5 million guaranteed. There's a reason there's options in his contract. But Matt kind of took it to another level. Like, this guy is a super quarterback. And I don't think the Niners even had that impression. Like, maybe they talk that way privately, but publicly, I think they just want people to look at Sam Darnold as a fun little project that could pay off down the line. But I don't know how invested they want to look like they are in Sam Darnold, because that's a major reclamation project too. There's no guarantees with Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and there's no guarantees with either of these two guys. But the thing is that with Mayoko's thing, because we haven't talked about it since then, when I heard him say that, and I kind of thought back, my take on it was it sounded very similar to what that Philadelphia reporter was saying about Nick Mullins a couple of years ago, how he's the best thrower in camp, not necessarily the best quarterback, but he's the best thrower. That's kind of what and so from that standpoint, I kind of get what he's talking about, what Mayoko is talking about. But yeah, it's a little
to me though, it sounds like saying Lonnie Walker is the greatest shooter in Lakers history.
Yeah, and it doesn't.
I'm like, hey man, he did. I don't know.
And that doesn't come out if he's not.
Yeah.
If he's not hearing that from somewhere, someone around that building, he's not saying that. If he's not going to come out and just say that on his own. I don't think.
Agree. Not to put words in Maddie's mouth or anything, but
yes.
So I didn't really watch that much of this clip because I can't stand Pat McAfee personally. So you watched the rest of it. What else did Ian Rappaport say that you found interesting?
Well, he was also talking about. So there was a part about what he said there, and he went on to talk about how during the draft he was talking to all the different coordinators who might be looking at quarterbacks, and there was one coordinator in particular who told him that Sam Darnold in 2022, the little bit that he played at the end of the year, there were stretches there where he looked as good as he's ever looked in his career. That was one of the things that he.
Is that a compliment?
You can take that for however you want to take it, depending on how it is. And the other thing that he did mention was
it is a nice thing to say.
He came back and he talked about the performance that Darnold had at the beginning of the 2021 season when he had all of the weapons around him. And I find both those interesting because listening to them talk, it sounded like 49ers Twitter because of the way that they were going back and forth. And it's the guys who were, why are you bringing this guy in? Well, he brought him in for this reason and all.
Sure.
Does anybody know what's happening over here with Brock and all that kind of stuff? It was an interesting little kind of a back and forth.
I mean, look, you have to have a reason to bring in Sam Darnold. I mean, it's not like we're going to be like, hey, he's trash, but we gave him $3.5 million. Like, of course there are reasons that you would want to bring him in and feel like he has the upside to be more than just a third or second string quarterback. I totally get that because you could have drafted, Stetson Bennett. You could have drafted Dorian Thompson-Robinson. You could have done all kind of stuff, but you brought in Sam Darnold, and we're seeing the reasons why, and the reasons are legit. They carry water. There might be something there. He did show flashes last year, but I think where some people get their feathers ruffled is when they think that all of a sudden the 49ers are more invested than Darnold than Trey. And I think with the Niners, who knows how they really feel, but they're trying to push back against that notion publicly for a lot of reasons. It doesn't do Lance any favors. It doesn't do Darnold any favors. And it does hurt whatever trade value they're trying to cultivate with Lance. So it makes sense for them to, at this point, to be like, hey, shut up with the enough. It's not helping.
Exactly. Just let us do it. Let us do what we want to do over here. Come on.
But can we talk about my non-cynical theory real quick? OTAs haven't started. Like, they're not competing, but they are throwing. They are warming up. And as someone who's watched Trey Lance warm up a lot, you can just tell that day whether he has it. You know what I mean? There are days when he's like every 10th throw is just off, and you're like, oh, it's gonna be one of these days, huh? Like you don't have much confidence in your arm today, do you, Trey? So I don't know. Maybe they've been watching him for a couple weeks and they're like, okay, all right, looks a little bit better. I hope that's the case. I have no idea. Well, I guess we'll see for ourselves.
We'll see it for ourselves, but I do think that there was a comment that was made by Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch. I don't remember which one. That the work that he did with the quarterback coach that we've seen the videos of the little highlights and stuff that has worked and that he's looking good. So he probably is looking good. They're you're going against there, throwing around in shorts. Who knows exactly what they're doing? And I do hope that he looks good because if he looks good, it's going to make for a really interesting summer.
Yeah, I mean, fans should know that he's been working with a different quarterback coach than the guy he worked with the last 2 years. Nothing against the guy he worked with. I think he was working with like Tom House, like some of the best coaches in the league, but clearly he wasn't getting results. So try something different. He's been with Mahomes. And also one more thing that I think is important. Last year, he was 22 and he kind of had this attitude. I can't prove it, but he kind of had a bit of a naive attitude. Like, hey, this is my team. And it's going to be my team for a while, and I can sort of ease into this. And you saw some pictures of him partying in Mexico. Now you saw the same pictures of Debo. So it wasn't scandalous, but you don't see that right now. And then there was a video that came out during the season of him making it rain. I don't think you're going to see stuff like that. I think he sort of gets the picture like this really is the not-for-long league. And even though they traded up for you a million times and drafted you in 3 different years, like they will kick you out for Brock Purdy tomorrow. And I think maybe, I'm just projecting all this on him. Maybe he has some urgency that he didn't have last year. Maybe.
I hope he does. I mean, it seemed like
Yeah.
he does, right? It seemed like he does when you
Like, why else would he be working out with Mahomes, right?
right when and
Yeah.
he said it himself. He talked about it during the Super Bowl week that he's expecting to compete. He wants a chance to compete. He wants that opportunity to
Yeah.
compete. So I think he knows that he has to get ready to compete. And I
Has to
like
back
what
it
you
up.
said too about you can tell what kind of day he's going to have just by the way he looks in the warmups. Because
Oh, yeah.
how many times are we watching them? And I know they throw when they're throwing to the ball, like their stuff that they're going to be working on that day, and they're throwing to the ball boys and coaches, and all of a sudden you see airmails
Yep.
one, and you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh wait, that's not something an NFL quarterback should be doing on that.
Correct.
These are
Correct.
layups right here because there's nobody
Absolutely.
around him. So
Right. Which just shows that
that's
he's
definitely
fighting
part of it.
he's still battling and trying to find whatever motion or release point arm slot works for him. And it's like, dude, you're running out of time, bud. I know you're only 20. I know you turned 23 today. Happy birthday, Trey Lance. But it really is a not for long league, and they like Brock Purdy, and they seem to like Sam Darnold. So it's time.
Yeah, he's only 23, but the hard part about it is he's been here for 3 years. They're running out of
Yeah.
time with him.
Yeah.
Again, and this isn't
That's
the
the hard
topic of ours,
part.
but
And he's
this is
expensive.
this is the other thing is that they are running out of time because he is getting more expensive. And they just talked
Yep.
about how important it is for their salary structure for them to be able to make it work with a cheap quarterback. Well, now the guy that's pushing them is a tenth of the price. So
Right.
it's a big difference.
That's a good point. I mean, if this is a backup quarterback competition, it's hard to keep a backup quarterback who's costing you $10 million. Now, can't do anything about it. They can't make him cheaper. And it's possible that they wanted to create that cap space to trade him, right? Because it would accelerate the signing bonus onto the cap.
Yeah,
This will never know.
that's a little
Anything
bit.
else about that interview that interests you?
I think those were the main things they talked about.
Right.
Like I said, that was the main takeaways that I took from it.